All right. So the next function is probably one of the most used functions that we're going to talk about today, and they are in most programs. Okay, they will have to be in your final project as well. And this is the jump to subroutine function. I find this to be one of the most useful instructions out there and programming processes. Okay, before we can get started, I'll tell you why. One, it's a great place to put items in a program that shouldn't happen. Okay? For example, like a warning system. All right? The idea of a warning system is that it should never, hopefully never go off unless there's a warning. So let's say that warning system's, let's just say 10 rungs. Okay? I don't want to use up 10 rungs of my main program. Okay? I'll shove that into a subroutine and then only activate it if that warning situation comes true. Okay? In that case, the subroutine would have an input. Okay? Another place that I like to use subroutines is when a machine does multiple things. Okay? So if I have a machine that does multiple things using the same parts, then I may have a subroutine for each one. So let's say I have a bagging operation, and the bagging operation, I can bag 3 different size bags. Okay? And so what I may do is in my main routine, I just may have 3 subroutines, one for a 16 ounce, one for a 12 ounce, one for an 8 ounce. Okay. And I'll interlock them so no subroutine can ever be on at the same time. So basically, what I'm using my main routine is as a selector. Okay. Which I think is really, really cool. Okay. And then the other thing that I really like subroutines for, and this has been in the past like, 20 years or so, you're really starting to see this, is for where your data collection items are. Okay. So let's say, for example, I'm tracking how many parts are going by, right? If I'm not using any inputs off that counter, all right, to control my process, I don't want it in my main routine where my process is located. Okay, so I may take that counter and just shove it into a subroutine that doesn't have an input. Okay, so it's always being scanned, it's just not in my main routine. Okay, this is really important. I really like this feature because what it does is it can break up all of your acquisitions, right? Another thing you can use subroutines for, and again, you can tell I'm a big fan, is let's say you have a conveyor belt and there are 5 stations along that conveyor belt. Well, at each station, multiple outputs are activating. Okay. What you can do is you can take each one of those stations and shove them into their own subroutine. Okay. With no inputs on it. Why would I do that? Well, let's say I'm having a problem with station 2 along that conveyor belt. I don't have to go through a 300 rung program. Okay. I can just go to the subroutine that's labeled station 2, for example, and I can go right there and then I've identified all those outputs and inputs or the logic behind controlling that. Okay. And so it can make troubleshooting much faster as well. Okay. So without further ado, let's talk about it. Okay. So the subroutine is a short program, does not have to be short, but it can be, okay, that is used by the main program to perform a specific function, okay? And again, everybody's definition of how they're going to use this may be a little bit different. I've just described all the ways that I love using them, okay? And so the important thing to understand is the subroutine is being controlled by the main program, okay? So these again are identified, like all of ours today, in the program control. Okay, so again, you'll have to tab over here, okay, in RSLogix 500, 5000, and Logic Pro, okay, which I'm coupling with this lecture. All right, they are identified as JSR, which is the jump to subroutine. Okay, and this is the only one you have to have, but they have a return and a subroutine, and I'll explain how those work here in a little bit. All right. So here we go. Now, when we're doing this, let me get my laser pointer out here. When a subroutine is called from the main routine, okay, the program is able to escape from the main program and go to the program subroutine to perform certain functions and then return to the main routine. So basically, this is what's happening. Okay, first of all, this is what your instruction looks like right here. All right, there's a U3 number of value evaluated with your first ones. All of your subroutines start with a U and then a colon. All right, and I explain this in the video using Logic Pro on how this works. Okay, so when this is false, okay, when this instruction is false, it will completely ignore this. All right, but the way that I like to think of a subroutine is when it is active or if there's not an input in there. It's basically you're taking these lines right here, okay, and you're shoving them in between these lines right here. Okay, so if it's 5 rungs, it's like adding 5 rungs into it whenever this is true, or if there's no input there and it's always true, it will run through. This is the subroutine area. This would be the subroutine that a lot of people like to have in the very first instruction, and then they have the return, which is an unconditional return. And so this returns you back from the subroutine. This would usually be at the end of your program, at the end of your subroutine with no inputs in front of it. Okay? So, for those of you who are watching this who are in my class, okay, you really want to mark this, all right? Because if you take, this has to be a part of your final project, and it has to be, and if you are take the advanced PLC course, we use these like crazy, okay? So anytime the weight of a conveyor exceeds the preset value, the subroutine program is scanned and the pilot lights changes to flashing, okay? So here we have a weight sensor, all right? And if that weight sensor goes over a set value, we need that pilot light to be blinking to let an operator know what's happening, okay? So here's the idea here. Here's your sensor. Again, should this go true? No, it really should never go true. You would hope that it is machined well enough that that is not an issue, okay? But if that sensor goes true, all right, this pilot light, what we have here, and really pay attention to how they do this. Basically what they're doing is they're using this pilot light to flash, okay? All right, so when the sensor is not true, the pilot light's just on. When it is true, this shuts off, and they're using the enable from this timer, okay, to go true. All right, they could use the timer timing if they want. And basically, they've interlocked these, and they will go on for 1 second, off for 1 second, on for 1 second, off for 1 second. You can make it go faster by, having it set to, let's say, like a half a second. All right. Later on in the class, you'll actually learn that let's say it's blinking for 2 minutes, and then after 2 minutes it starts blinking even faster, okay, to let them know, hey, something else is going on here. All right, and so now, could this program be installed in here? 100% it could be. But why would you do that if you know how to program a subroutine? You wouldn't want to. Again, is this supposed to happen? No. Okay, it's a warning light, all right? It's not supposed to happen. So let's shove it into a subroutine so it's not wasting our scan time while this is running, okay? So here's how it works. Motor's running. We go to our subroutine here. It is not turned on yet, okay? Now we activate that sensor, and boom, now look. Now they have this set to a little bit less than a second, okay? They have it set to 2 seconds, okay? And these will just go back and forth, and they're operating that pilot light that's blinking over here. This is in your main routine, okay? All right? And this is just going to blink. And again, you can make this as fast as you want it. Okay, they made it 2 seconds. You can make it a second, you can make it half of a second, however you want to do that. Okay? And that is an example of how a subroutine works. Again, I think they underutilize it in this, but I've filmed a couple of videos on how these work. Make sure you watch those because if I haven't emphasized this enough, I'm a huge fan of these. Okay?